Very good afternoon to all. Very good afternoon to all. Day 4 of our webinar. Happy to see the active participation from students as well as other professionals. When you received the webinar brochure, I'm sure at least a few of the undergraduate students must have Googled the terminology Pigovian tax. Let me brief you here. Certain actions have negative externalities. Consider a factory polluting a river or before I take on, a request to all the participants, maintain the discipline and decorum. So unmute your audio. If not, we may have to take, pin you up from the session. Yeah, thank you. So coming back to the topic of the day, Pigovian tax. So let me brief you here. Certain actions have negative externalities. Consider a factory polluting a river or causing health problems in surrounding neighborhoods. But he is not paying for these external costs. This cost is to be borne by a society which represents as the social cost. This creates a market inefficiency that is generally addressed by the topic of Pigovian tax. Pigovian taxes are not a novelty and have been already in practice in cities as congestion pricing in Singapore, London, or carbon tax in the USA. Now, let us look into a few statistics to understand what is the need for Pigovian tax in India. According to a World Bank study, India lost more than 8.5% of its rise in GDP in 2013 due to air pollution. As per research conducted by Uber, Indian commuters take 1.5 times longer to travel a given distance at peak hours. As of now, there is no strategic policy measure to counter these economic losses in the Indian context. I'm not the right person to talk more about this. We have a great speaker with us today to make us understand the concept of Pigovian tax and talk more on this. Let me welcome Mr. Aditya Saxena, Research Associate, Transport System, ITDP. Aditya completed his bachelor's in civil engineering from Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal, where he developed a keen interest in traffic and transportation related studies. His passion for the same motivated him to pursue his master's in transport planning from the School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. During his master's program, he realized the importance of people-centric mobility over vehicle-oriented transit, which encouraged him to work on sustainable, affordable, and equitable transportation. He has authored articles and research papers on the same, one of which was awarded as the best presentation at ICSSR-sponsored International Conference on Rethink, Restrict, Restructure, and Reinvent the Sustainable Development Perspective. His master's thesis was on the externalities of urban road private transport system. Before joining ITDP, he was working as a policy mentor with the Indian Road Safety Campaign, IRSC. Prior to this, he has interned with Rail India Technical and Economic Service, RITES, and City Speaks as a policy research intern. Hearty welcome, Aditya. Welcome to our webinar session.
Thank you, Reshma, for the invitation. I am glad that you gave me such a nice opportunity to let the students know what is the concept of Pigovian tax and introduce this in Indian context. I am really honored. Thank you.
Yeah. So then next, you can take the session. So to the general message to all the participants, any questions, please put it in the chat box, or towards the end of the speaker's session, you can have an interaction session. I request Aditya to start sharing your screen.
Sure. Is it visible now?
The screen has not come. Yeah, yes.
Okay. So good afternoon to everyone present here. Today I will be putting up my views on Pigovian tax and its introduction in Indian context. So the first question is, what is Pigovian tax and who developed its concept? Well, the concept was developed by a British economist, Arthur Pigou, in 1920. And Pigouvian tax are those taxes which are implied on externalities. Externalities are an output of an activity which does not affect the person causing them. For example, externalities can be positive as well as negative. For example, if there is a development of a metro station near your house, then your house prices might shoot up. So this is a positive externality of a metro station. Similarly, if there is a metro construction area and if informal workers are given spaces to run their carts in that area, then this will generate some economy. This is a positive effect and this is a positive externality. But giving you more example of negative externalities. So suppose this is the first picture in which a person is smoking. He is only paying the cost of cigarette. He is not paying the cost of the harmful effects or the harmful gases which are released because of smoke. And there are a lot of chance that people who are standing near to him, they might be also they might also be inhaling these harmful gases. So that person is only paying the private cost, which is the cost of cigarette. That person is not paying the cost of harmful gases which are affecting other people. This is external cost. And when you combine external cost with private cost, that is the cost of cigarette plus the cost of harmful gases, then that becomes social cost. Now, the other example which I want to give you is in the second picture, in which you can see that there's an auto which is emitting a lot of carbon pollution or other air pollutants, and there's a woman who is just putting up some cloth on her nose just to prevent these gases to enter in her body. So now again, the auto driver is just paying the cost of petrol. He is not paying the cost of emissions. So these are the two negative examples which I can give you of negative externalities. Uh, now, the second thing is that I have tried to further explain what are the negative externalities from private transport. Problem tree analysis is a method which is used here. So assume that all the words written below are the root causes like road crashes, congestion, noise pollution, air pollution, GHG emissions. So these are basically the root causes, the root of a tree. And then this is the trunk of a tree. So all these factors are contributing to one factor, that is negative externalities in urban road transport. And these are the resultant of these factors. You can consider them as branches or as flowers from a tree. Like for example, congestion is equals to the loss in value of time. So loss in value of time is a concept in which you can say that if a person is stuck in congestion, then he might be losing some time. And because he is going on a working trip, if he is going on a working trip, then that time must be having some value. Also, if the person is stuck in congestion, then there are a lot of chance that he might be also consuming more fuel. Now in Indian context, if you see, consuming more fuel is almost a bad habit or a bad problem, because fuel has some opportunity cost. Fuel can be used for generating electricity. Fuel can be used for other things as well. So this leads to increase in fuel consumption, which further leads to economic loss. The other thing is for noise pollution. So noise pollution leads to loss in property value, which is again an economic loss. Also, noise pollution leads into health related issues, from anxiety, depression to hearing loss. And as per the CPCB limits, the noise pollution level should be less than 55 dB during daytime at residential area. But in India, if you use a decibel meter and if you check it, then it's almost above 65 dB in most of the areas, especially areas which are near to market. The other could be road crashes. So road crashes can be tangible as well as intangible. Intangible in terms of that there is a life loss in road crashes, and life loss can never be monetized. How can you monetize a life loss of a student who was studying in 12th standard? You don't know his future, you don't know his contribution to the nation, so you cannot monetize that. Although we have some methods like statistical value of life for calculating, or cost benefit analysis, or multi-criteria analysis, but no, it is an intangible loss which cannot be calculated. The other is vehicle emission like air pollution and GHG emission. So basically, GHG emission leads to ozone depletion, which further reflects into temperature rise. And just to prevent this temperature rise, World Bank or United Nations, they are putting up a lot of high abatement cost. which is again an economic loss. Air pollution leads to increase in PM level, which you can see in major Indian cities. People putting up clothes on their nose just to prevent the harmful gases entering into them, and again this causes a health illness. So basically, this is what this tree explains you. The next thing is the question arises that why do we need such a mechanism like Pigovian tax in India? So, are there any figures or stats which suggest that we need Pigovian tax in India? So, let me quickly present some of the figures to answer this question. So, as Reshma also told you, according to a World Bank study, India lost more than 8.5% of its rise in GDP in 2013 due to air pollution. Now, this is a big economic loss. The other is, as per Uber, Indian commuters take 1.5 times longer to travel, especially in major Indian cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, Kolkata. Uh, so, and this then leads to a loss of around $22 billion, immense loss every year, just because of congestion. Road accidents kill around 600 people per day, and as I told you, it's an intangible loss. You can never monetize the loss of a life, although you have methods for it. The last one which I would like to present is that 22 of the world's most polluted cities are in India, and vehicular pollution or pollution from vehicle contributes almost 40 to 50% of the total pollution. So that's why we need such a mechanism in India. Now, I would like to present you what is the current transit system of India. Almost 65% of the people use private transport in India, and they occupy 82% of the road space. In NUTP, National Urban Transport Policy, if you go through it, you will find that there is a section which talks about equitable allocation of road space. So what that means is that a bus is carrying 60 people at a time, and a bus has what, 30 square meters of area around that. And if you look at a car is carrying one or two people at a time, and they are occupying around 15 square meter, not 15, less than that, I think 12, 10, 12 meter or square meter of area. So you also imagine that how much area a person is occupying when he is using his private vehicle. Private or public transport is using only 6% of the road space and carrying 35% of people. That is, one person is equivalent to carrying almost 6% of the people. This is a big inequity issue. The other thing is, the other inequity issue is in parking charges. Now, if you look at the parking charges in India, if I own a home motor or motor home, which is now in trend, and if I park it on a CBD, I might only have to pay 100 to 150 rupees per day. That is equivalent to 4,500 rupees per month. And if you want to rent an apartment near a CBD, especially in cities like Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, you might even have to pay 40,000, 50,000 rupees per month. The other thing is that the prices are so low. If you compare the price even with the cities abroad, they are almost 10 times to 18 times less than what we have in cities abroad. So why I'm advocating so much for, or emphasizing so much on this fact, is that just notice this thing, that when you have CBDs and when you are allocating so much of road space just for parking, imagine a scenario in which there is a shopkeeper who is rented his space for around 50 rupees per square feet. He is paying you, if he has 100 square feet of area, he is paying you what, around 30,000 rupees per month then. And if in the same area, if you park a car, then you are not paying, you're paying almost 3,000 rupees per month. The other thing is that what if the same area is given to informal sector workers? Suppose the area which is occupied for parking, 50% of the area is given to small carts, informal workers, then they will get some job. If they will get some job, so I would also like to present the fact that India is a labor surplus country. We have a lot of labor, we have a lot of unemployment. Whenever a person gets employment, there is some shadow price or there is some extra benefit associated with it, because then he will be able to take care of his family, he will be able to send his school to children. That will have a lot of other factors. As I told about positive externality, sending your children to a school will have a positive externality to the nation. So again, that the whole amount of space is wasted in parking. I'm not saying there should not be parking, but if you are giving so much of parking, then at least you should have some restricted space for informal sector, or you should price them accordingly. Either they should be priced as per the opportunity cost of land, which the rent owners in the same area has to pay, or there should be a mechanism like travel demand-based parking. If the demand is more, parking is high. And if you consider the current scenario, 40% of the road space in India on an average is occupied for parking. 40% of the road space. Now you can really imagine the scenario. Other thing is that this is a bit of shameful fact when you see that out of the world, out of the top five congested cities in the world, top three are in India. Bangalore, Bangalore has 71% of the congestion index as per TomTom index, which is a reliable source. So Bangalore is considered as the most congested city in India. Now, the next thing which comes in our mind is that how novel is the idea of Pigovian tax. Now, if you look at the example of Singapore, Singapore started the concept of congestion pricing in 1975, almost 55 years ago, almost five and a half decade years ago. And you will be surprised to shock that they are so much developed that they started with area licensing scheme. After some point of time, they changed the scheme into cordon pricing scheme, and now they are working on electric road pricing scheme. So there is a nation which is working on improvement of Pigovian tax. It's not only about Singapore. If you look at US has carbon tax on emissions. You look at London, Stockholm, they also have a congestion pricing, and it's very well practiced in London. France has noise pollution tax. Now residential properties which are near airport, they are being paid some amount because they have to bear that high decibel. And lastly, the example is of Canada. So Canada has also started to internalize the external cost, that is carbon tax. Now, as I told you, the concept of Pigovian tax is just to internalize the external cost. Now, carbon tax, noise pollution tax, congestion price are all a type of Pigovian tax, and it's not a novelty anymore. The next thing is that now we understood what the world is doing. What are we doing in terms of it? So if you just go through all the policy measures developed by government, or if you just browse all the documents, all the current policy initiatives which we have by Ministry of Road Transport and Highway or Ministry of Urban Development, so you'll find a handful of schemes and policies like NUTP, National Urban Transport Policy, National Road Safety Policy, Traffic of Bus Karo was a campaign by MOUD, introduced by campaign, a social campaign. Then JNNURM was launched by MOUD. There is another new thing, that is National Common Mobility Card. So you will find that Indian government is presently working on promoting sustainable, more integrated, sustainable, technologically advanced public transport. But the fact is that they are not suggesting any mechanism how we can internalize this external cost. You are not going to find any national level mechanism who is suggesting you or suggesting a strategy or measure that how you can introduce Pigovian tax in India. Although some people might argue us that we pay a PUC charge, that is a pollution under control charge, which you have to pay for your vehicles in every 6 months, but that is only 60 rupees. And to be exact, PUC charges are not with the rationale of Pigovian tax. PUC charges are just basic handling and certification fee, because those people are going to check the emission from your vehicle, so they are charging you around 60 rupees. It's not at all with the rationale of negative externalities. Now, let me introduce you some of the strategies by which we can introduce Pigovian tax in India. Let's first encounter with congestion. So the first step is of assessing switching threshold. I think this will be a new word for most of you, switching threshold. So let me give you an example. Like for example, there are two South Indian chains, South Sagar Ratna and Savna Bhavan, and you like the dosa of Savna Bhavan more than Sagar Ratna. The price is 100 rupees for both. Now you want to enter in Savna Bhavan, but suddenly a person from Sagar Ratna comes to you and tells you that what if I reduce the price by 20 rupees? Will you come in my shop? You say no, I won't. Then he'll ask you, Acha, what if I reduce the price by 25 rupees? Will you come in my shop? Now you might enter his shop. The amount or the price at which you change your decision, that is switching threshold. Now, how we can use this in congestion pricing? We have some stated preference survey in which we ask two-wheeler user or four-wheeler user that how much amount of money are you willing to pay extra if you want to travel with the prevalent mode. Like I ask a car user that will you pay 50 rupees per day extra if I charge you on congestion pricing? If he's saying yes, then ask him more. Will you pay 55 rupees? The point at which he says no, I won't pay more than this amount, like 55 rupees, I won't pay more than 55 rupees. If you impose 55 rupees on me per day for traveling on a car, then I might shift to public transport. Then that 55 rupees is the switching threshold. This is a method of estimating congestion price. This is a willingness to shift or a willingness to accept survey, which is a stated preference survey. The next method is a survey based method in which what you do is, like for example, you have a road stretch and you travel in that 1 kilometer stretch with a four-wheeler of yours during peak hour. So peak hour is basically the hour when there are official trips, when the traffic is high. You can consider that hour when we have official trips, like from 9 to 10 a.m. in the morning when people are rushing to their office. At that point of time, if you travel on a distance of 1 kilometer, then you might take 10 minutes. And at the same distance, at the same length, and at the same point, if you drive your same vehicle, then you might take only 5 or 6 minutes at non-peak hour. Non-peak hour may be at 3 to 4 p.m. or 3 to 4 p.m. or 8 or 9 to 10 p.m. In the night. So those 2 minutes, those additional 2 minutes are the time you are losing. Now, if you want to convert this time into value, into monetary terms, then IRC SP30, Indian Road Congress SP30 provides you the cost of how you can convert that amount of time into value, and that is with respect to the mode you are using. So if you're using a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, then your value of time is more as compared to a bus user. So that is how the second approach works. The third thing is for the emissions. So from various literatures, from various researches, from various technology research papers, you have the emission factor. Like what is the amount or what is the gram of emission I would emit whenever I'm traveling 1 kilometer from a two-wheeler or from a small car or from a big car or from an auto. You can consider a small car as Alto or Zen or a those sort of cars, and you can consider sedan or XUV 500 sort of cars into big car. So you have the emission factors for these four are basically the air pollutants: CO, HC, NOx, and PM. And CO2 is basically considered as GHG emission. The major majority of the GHG emission is because of CO2. So you also have the price of these emission factors in gram. You have the unit in gram per kilometer, how much is emitting, and you have the price in gram. Obviously this price was of 2004 and 5, so I have used the inflation rate which you can find from any reliable document, and have converted that into a current rate. For CO2, there was a World Bank study. So that study suggests us that by 2020 the price of carbon should be around 80 dollars per ton of CO2. So you can use that price for estimating the amount of Pigovian tax because of vehicle emissions. And if you look at this picture, then carbon tax is a very common concept in Europe. Almost most of the countries are using this mechanism to internalize or to counter this emissions. The next thing is it's about the noise pollution, that how you can monetize noise pollution. So the first approach is using hedonic market prices. So as per the first approach, this has an hypothesis that property areas or households which are near the market area, very near to market area. I'm saying very near to market area. Uh, their increment in price will not be as much as properties which are just a distance away from it, and the reason is taken as noise pollution. Now this concept is widely in practice in foreign nations. So what this concept does is that it estimates that what is the annual amount of increase in your property price which should have happened. Like for example, in 2010, my property price was 10,000 rupees per square feet. In 2011, it came to be 12,000 rupees per square feet. But in the same locality, a household which is 100 meters away from me and does not have this a huge amount of noise pollution, their price has increased from 10,000 rupees to 13,000 rupees. That means I am facing a loss of 1,000 rupees. This is how you can monetize that. 1,000 rupee per square foot loss is for property owners who have property in the vicinity of noise pollution. And then you can use the number of vehicles passing through it, and then you can evaluate to find how much a car user or how much a bike user should pay for it. The second approach is Coase theorem. So Coase theorem was given by an economist, Ronald Coase. According to this theorem, in an perfectly market scenario, two parties shall be able to bargain and come to a resultant. If I have to explain this on a very simple term, then assume that, for example, you have a household, and I ask you that how much you are willing to accept for the vehicles who are causing noise in front of your house. This is the first approach, that how much you are willing to accept. Now you tell me that you are willing to accept 100 rupees, and similarly I ask all the people in your building how much they are willing to accept, and I get an amount of like 1 lakh rupees, and then I impose that amount to the vehicular users, private vehicle users. That is the first approach. The second, but this is not very approximate, because willingness to accept or willingness to pay is something which is not very approximate. The more approximate way would be to find out the cost of inserting noise barriers. Now, why I'm saying this is that there is a relation, as per literature and researches, there's a relation between vehicle PCU and noise and noise. Noise is basically accelerating noise and decelerating noise. I'm not talking about the honking noise, because honking noise depend on the travel behavior of a person. You cannot assess how much a person is going to honk when he is driving a car, uh, because it does not depend on the vehicle typology. But yes, acceleration and deceleration sound does depend on the vehicle PCU. So what you can do is you can conduct a traffic volume count survey in front of a household. You can get the number of vehicles or number of PCU passing through it, and then you have the relation that if there is a car of one PCU, then this is the amount of acceleration and deceleration sound you have. Similarly, you have for two-wheeler, for three-wheeler, for big car, for small car, and after that, if you equate it, you will get that how much per vehicle a person should pay whenever he is crossing in front of your house. So at last, I would just like to put it like how we can implement this sort of mechanism in India. So basically, the strategy uh, a strategy to collect Pigovian tax can use basically a global navigation satellite system, GNSS. I don't know how many of you would have heard of it. It's a new technology. National Highway Authority of India is also planning to implement such sort of technology, for collected toll prices. So this is the basic system architecture, and this is something which I thought that could be a suggestive measure in Indian condition. So the first thing you need for this is the road network details, that how wide the road is, what is the length of road, and all those geometric details of a road. Then you need the non-spatial data, like for example, what is the what are the number of households are there when your car is passing on a specific road, some spatial data, some topographical data, and that data can go into algorithm. So basically what Yen's algorithm is the shortest path algorithm. This is a basically computer science algorithm in which if I have to go from A to B, I have three different routes. And when I have three different routes, this algorithm will tell me that what route will have the minimum distance. So in this criteria, or in this case, you can replace the term distance by price, by external price, by Pigovian tax. That if I have to go from A to B, and if I have three different routes, then what is the amount of noise pollution, congestion, air pollution, combining all is the Pigovian tax I am going to cause. So that is what I am going to get. Then that price is going to feed into an information into a database. The next step, which is the most crucial step, is basically that all the vehicles in your city should have an in-vehicle unit or a chip inside them. So that chip can automatically get connected with the satellite, and that chip can then assess that what is the distance you have traveled, on which road you have traveled, and what is the Pigovian tax you have to collect. After that, when you collect this information, your prices can be estimated, and then those prices can be mailed or can be notified to the owner of a chip, that this is the amount you have to pay. So this is a basic mechanism which can be used in Indian context. So yeah, this is it from my side. I hope it was not too technical.
Yeah, thank you, Aditya. Thank you for the great session. We started saying that most of us are unaware of Pigovian tax, but the last 30 minutes, you made us understand the basic concept and the rationale behind Pigovian tax. I'm sure participants would have learned the need of such concept to be applied in India and how a framework has to be developed or implement and to implement and collect Pigovian tax. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. It was indeed a great session.
I hope so that.
Yes, it
Yeah, go on,
is.
go on.
Yes. So there are a couple of questions on the chat box, which I can read it to you. And even the session is open for the participants to interact. Since we felt like it is more of highly technical, even for the undergraduate level, we thought of minimizing the content and elaborating our interaction session more. So it's time for participants to interact. Whoever wants to interact, they can raise their hands so we can ask each of the person to unmute themselves so that we can have a one by one discussion. To start with, Mr. Abhilash. Mr. Abhilash has posted a question. Not Yeah, is the Mr. Abhilash is there? You would like to directly ask, Mr. Abhilash? Okay, so he says he has a set of questions on what basis Pigovian taxes to be levied.
Okay. Uh, shall I answer?
Yeah, yes, Aditya.
Okay. So as I explained to you all, so basically Peruvian tax are we are going to collect them as a from the negative externalities. Like the basis should be that, for example, if I'm using a car and if I'm traveling a 10-kilometer distance, then there must be some sort of vehicular emission which I would be emitting, but I'm not paying for it. So the base should be that by the mechanism which I told you, you can calculate it how much amount of emission you are emitting, what is the cost of that emission, and then you can collect it. Same goes for congestion, same goes for noise pollution. So the base is the negative externalities: noise pollution, air pollution, congestion.
Mr. Abhilash has posted another question. We would like
Mm-hmm.
to see whether Mr. Abhilash can directly ask the question. So the question is the Pigovian tax and sin tax is same? This is a question number 2. And another question is, third question, at which stage Pigovian tax is to be levied? Producer end or at the consumer end? The fourth question is, in cost benefit analysis, how this Pigovian tax is to be considered? There are a series of questions. Shall I repeat again, Aditya, or you got it?
No, no, I got it. So the first thing, that at what age you should imply a Pigouvian tax on someone. So basically, the age, the minimum age of driving is what you have, and the concept of Pigouvian tax is not related to age or gender or something like that. It's a simple concept that if you are polluting environment, or if you are emitting some sins, or if you have some negative externalities, you should pay for it. It doesn't matter that if a 10-year-old boy is emitting environment and causing pollution, or if that is a 60-year-old person, whoever is emitting should pay. That is the simple concept. The second thing which you asked was what was the question? Second
Yeah,
question.
so he's asking, is the Pigovian tax and sin tax, are they both same? And the other question is, at which stage it has to be levied, or is it from producer end or from the consumer end?
Okay, so the first thing, that sin tax and Pigment tax, almost they are almost same. The concept is same for both of them. That is that a person who is causing, or a industry who's causing some harmful effects should pay for those effects. The concept is basically equal. That is, the social cost should be equivalent to marginal private cost and external cost. The second thing, which you asked, that at which point it should pay. So basically, if you look at the consumer point of view, if I have an automobile industry and if I'm making some automobiles, then I must be emitting some pollutions. Now I am a producer. I should pay for it. So every time a producer has to pay for it. Even if I am driving a car, if I have my car, and if I am using my car, then also I am a producer. I am producing some emissions. I am producing some noise pollution. So I have to pay. Consumer don't have to pay.
There is one more question from Mr. Abhilash. In cost benefit analysis, how this Pigovian tax is to be considered?
So, in cost benefit analysis, let me give you an example of how we do cost benefit analysis. For example, if I go to private authorities, and if I tell them that I need to construct a flyover so that I can reduce traffic, then they will ask me that what is the cost it will incur, but for how much time it will take, and what are the benefits associated to it. Now I'll return back with them on FIRR, that is financial economic rate of return. Okay, but I won't be able to suffice that, because FIRR won't suffice that. Now the other thing which I do is the economic analysis, which you do in cost benefit analysis. The economic analysis will tell you that this is the value of time you will save if you build a flyover. Similarly, into cost benefit analysis, when I meant about cost benefit analysis, I tried to relate that with intangible loss of life. So what I meant was that a student who's studying in tenth class dies because of road accidents, then there is no such mechanism who can tell that what would have been his future and how much he would have contributed to the nation. If you consider that into Pigouvian tax terms, then cost benefit analysis would be that if I am driving my car, or if I am using a private automobile, then how much of the harmful effects I am putting on society, and this is the amount I have to pay to bring an equilibrium, an economic equilibrium in the society.
I think that is clear to Mr. Abhilash. So there is a question from Mr. Ankit Khatri. Mr. Ankit, you would like to ask, means you can take up this opportunity. No, okay, so let me read it out. Since there are different socio-economic groups in society, there were working and non-working class of people. How value of time can be quantified for congestion pricing? This is the first question. Second question, how pollution cost of different pollutants can be quantified? What is the rationality? So there are two questions. One
Okay.
is asking about congestion pricing, and second is about considering the pollution cost with respect to the different pollutants.
Okay, so answering the first question, as I told between the presentation also, IRC SP30 gives you the value of time. So it does not consider that you are working or not, you are married or not, what is your gender, what is your age. IRC SP30 only considers that what sort of trip you are making. If that is a working trip, then your value of time is multiplied 1.3 times. Or if it is not a working trip, then your value of time is multiplied by 0.3 times. and the price they give is as per the mode they use, mode which are used. Like for example, for a bus user, the price is less as compared to a four-wheeler user. So they are considering the socio-economic status based on the vehicle you are using. And this is what IRC is using. So you can directly take the prices from IRC. The second thing which he talked about, that how we can quantify air pollution or GHG emissions. So on, I think on 10th or 11th slide, I have shown a table in which according to your mode, like for example, if you have a car and if you're traveling per kilometer, then how much amount of air pollutants and carbon emission you would be making. So this is the amount you get. Now convert this amount into price. So prices are also given for per unit, like what is the price of carbon per gram, what is the price of PM per gram, what is the price of nitrogen oxides per gram. So this mechanism is already there. It's the most simplest thing to calculate carbon emissions and price them.
Yeah. So moving on, I'm going to compile two questions. One is whether these kind of concept has been implemented in Middle East countries. So there is a question specifically asking about this in UAE, and even in India, they wanted to know like how much is in India this tax is in use.
Okay, so as I told that in India, there is no such mechanism like that, uh, like Pigovian tax in India. And if you talk about the UAE, then I'm not very much sure about it. There would have been a case that this might have also been implemented in UAE. I have tried to just compile the best practices. So a lot of countries are trying to implement it, but all of them are not best practices. So there might be a case that it might have been implemented in UAE as well.
Yeah. Yes. Moving on, Ms. Ranjini, what are the outcomes or the results of implementing these Pigovian taxes?
Okay, so like for example, the outcome would be that more people will shift towards public transport, or they are going to pay the price they should pay. Like for example, if you ask 10 car users that if you have to pay Pigovian tax, that is around 20 rupees, 30 rupees per day, will you still use your car? And out of those 10 users, three of them say that no, I won't use the car, I'll shift towards public transport. That means three people will shift towards public transport, three less vehicles on road, and the revenue of public transport will increase. Whereas the other seven people who are saying that I will still use my cars, so the additional cost, the Pigovian tax which those seven people will pay, then can be used to improve the public transport services of your city. This is basically a double dividend mechanism in which for one cause you can use a dividend twice. Like you can take the price of external cost, that is the first mechanism. The second mechanism is that you can use the money on improving the public transport services. So this is the outcome.
Yes. So there is a connected question with that. They wanted to know from Ms. Ranjini again and from Ms. Ishita uh, whether the public transport vehicles in that case, is there a need to pay the tax or how it can helpful in decreasing the carbon dioxide emission. Let me add one more question. How the prices are to be decided?
Okay, so first of all, public transport shall never pay for such cost because they're already running a, a social service. Public transport is meant to run for a social service. They're already carrying a lot of people. This is a basic sustainability mode. So public transport shall never pay such things. The second thing you asked, that how we can price this. So as I told you, according to the distance you're traveling, you can price carbon. If you are traveling on a stretch which has lot of residential properties, then you can price noise pollution. And obviously a vehicle is traveling during peak hours will obviously have some congestion. So basically the mechanism which I showed in the last compiles all the three costs in which you have to enter the network on which you want to travel. So then it will estimate. And the last question was that how it will be able to decrease carbon dioxide. The first thing is that I agree that in Indian context, a status symbol or a stigma associated with public transport services is big. So there is a chance that only 10% people will shift towards public transport, even if equivalent tax are implied. But even the shift of 10% towards public transport is a lot when you talk about carbon emissions. And the second thing is that prices should be sustainable. This is a sustainable price that at least you are paying for what you're causing. So a 10% shift can reduce carbon emissions as well as you are getting more price to promote the public transport services.
Yes, I think that addressed the question. So moving on, next is from Mr. Chetan Dudamani. He's a research PhD scholar from IIT. So he's saying, thank you for the very informative presentation. He wants to know, are there any references on survey methods we can follow in transportation planning for Pigovian tax? Likewise, we mentioned for congestion pricing, air pollution, etc. Any specific questions we need to follow to understand about the Pigovian tax has to be considered for transportation planning perspective?
So is she meant to ask that how can we conduct a survey to assess the price of Pigovian tax, or how we can know how many people will shift if Pigovian tax are implied?
I guess, Mr. Chetan, if you want to ask to the speaker. He was.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, please, Chetan.
Yeah, the same, exactly what you mean. I just wanted to know, is there any kind of survey methods or kind of any particular kind of questions that we need to follow? Because we rarely see in terms of congestion pricing and air pollution type of questions, or willingness to pay or willingness to use some kind of transport or mode switching behavior. What kind of there are any references for this?
To understand the user perception.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
okay. So the first thing is that Pigovian tax is a broad term which is made up of different negative externalities like congestion, noise pollution, emission. These are the three externalities, but there are all a lot of more like light pollution or road crashes or road pavement damages. So first thing which you can do is first you can sort what are the negative externalities you want to introduce. Like in my case, I have tried to address noise pollution, emission, and congestion. Congestion you can calculate from the survey, that is willingness to pay, how much a person is willing to pay for using a car. So like that you can calculate congestion. For noise pollution, you have a different mechanism, that is cost theorem or hedonic market prices. And for emission, then again you have emission factors. So after clubbing these three, you will get a price. And if you get a price, then you can go to users and ask them that, sir, will if this price is implied on you, first you need to know where they are traveling from and where's their origin and where's the destination, and then you can calculate the amount of payment tax they need to pay. After that you can go to them and ask them that, sir, this is the amount of payment tax you need to pay because you are using a private vehicle. Will you still continue using public transport or will you shift towards private transport? So likewise you can consider a survey, and then you can assess the change in travel behavior. You can also note their age, years of education, income, and then basically regress it, that at what age group or at what education qualification people are willing to shift towards public transport if the price is increased. So this will basically give you the price elasticity or the demand elasticity.
I hope, Chetan, you got the answer. So moving on, a question from Mr. Gupta. How inclusive is the tax? Can it be made to account for marginalized section just like the tax slabs?
Okay, so answering this question, like for example, if you tell me about the marginalization or this tax should be paid as per the income groups, then consider a scenario in which you are thinking that a labor must be using an BMW or a labor must be using a car. It's very rare, but even if he is using a car, that doesn't just because he is poor, that does not give him a liberty to get away from the harmful effects the society has to pay. The concept has to be kept very simple, that whosoever, uh, coming from any gender, any economic group, who is harming should pay. It's like a justice in which you don't consider that who has done a sin, you just punish the person. Similarly, here you don't consider what is the status of a person, if he has committed a crime or if he not a crime. To be honest, if he has committed some negative externalities which society is bearing, he should pay. It's a simple concept.
Yeah, so another question, straightforward question, whether this Pigovian tax is to be considered as a direct tax or an indirect tax.
This is a very legal question, so I am
That's
not the
why
right person to ask.
consciously put it as a straightforward question. Yeah.
But it should be a direct tax. It should directly be taken from the emitter.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So there is, we could see like Mr. Sangu wants to answer wants to ask question. You have raised your hand. You can use the platform to ask your question to the speaker. If not, we'll move to the maybe another two more question. After that, we'll wind up. So there is a question from Mr. Mukesh. If tax are being continuously levied on people, then usable charge is gone the burden to the people. So there should be a point where people should think at least as this we are not taxed. I mean, I guess it's we can take it as a comment rather than a question. So moving on to final question, we will take it up as from Mr. Dinesh. Is this applied to users who emits beyond the emission limits set by the government?
See, currently, as I told you, we have a pollution under control charge in which government is calculating how much your vehicle is emitting and is it below the standard or above the standard. If it is out the standard, then you might be penalized. So that is one thing. This is basically a command and control measure in which you set a limit and then you see that how much a person is emitting. The second thing is an economic incentive based policy measure, which I think is the best suited in Indian context. Now, suppose if the limit is of 50, if the limit is of 50 grams of carbon emission in 6 months, which I can emit, and if I'm emitting only 49, does that mean that I should not pay for it? Society is any which going to get affected because there's no fixed number of vehicles you have on road. You can have as many vehicles in road as you want. There's no rule like you can only register 4 vehicles as per a person. So there are a lot of vehicles who are emitting a lot of emission, but within the standard. It doesn't mean that they don't have to pay. So this is a basically a different concept, that is command and control measure, and what I am telling about is an economic incentive based policy measure.
Yes. So maybe we'll take up one last question. Mr. Abhilash, you raised your hand. You can speak up now. Yes.
Hello, sir. Sir, before I have asked the question whether this is a producer side or consumer side. For that, you have answered that this is from producer side. Then how it becomes as a direct tax? It should be an indirect tax, right?
See, first of all, for a direct and indirect tax, I'm really not the right person because this is something related to legalities. What I thought of when you asked what a direct or indirect tax was that, like for example, if I am causing pollution and if I am giving a tax, then that might be a direct tax. So I'm not a very technical person in this term of telling you it's a direct or indirect tax.
So then this should be a producer.
This is a legal term. I am not able
producer
to.
and no, sorry, consumer and not the producer end, sir.
So tell me, I give you an example. Like for example, consumer, like for example, I have a vehicle, I drive it. Now I am a producer of emissions. Agreed? I am producing some emissions.
Yes, sir. But
Agreed? Okay.
my question is to whether manufacturers have to pay or else customers has to pay. We are using that vehicle. We are not producing that
Okay.
vehicle. That type I have asked.
Okay. In that sort, then I gave you an example of Canada. So Canada don't take direct taxes; it take indirect taxes. The other thing is that when there is an automobile industry who is making a vehicle that is emitting some sort of pollution, so at that point of time, that automobile industry is paying a tax. That is one tax. But when you buy that vehicle, you are again using it, then you are again emitting some pollutions.
Yes, sir.
So then you have to pay now, because this is a two-time emission thing.
Yeah.
Once it is for making and then it is for using.
both people have to pay this tax.
Yes, both have to take. I don't know it's direct or indirect, but I think both people have to
Yeah.
take.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I guess with this, we can wind up the session. And we were very happy to say another note that we had, among the participants, we could see that Professor A. Viragavan from IIT Madras. But I guess has not he has signed out, right? Yes, yes. He didn't last for the end of the session. So I mean that was a lot for us to
It's
see.
my pleasure that he even listened to me.
Yes, Aditya, I thought, I should announce it here. Yes. So thank you, Aditya. It was indeed a great session. Most of the students, including, many of the professionals, we came to know that, these kind of concepts, Pigovian tax, its application, the way how we have to think forward to implement such concepts in India. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge here. And we thank all the participants. So we could see around 90 participants today. So thank you all the participants for your active participation. And as usual, your feedback is very important for us. So kindly fill up the attendance and feedback, which the links are provided here. Okay, so looking forward for the next day, which is our final day. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you all the
Thank you
participants.
all. Thank you for providing me such a great platform, such a good opportunity to express my views. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, participants.